When Nintendo of Europe's Laurent Fischer claimed that only Geeks and Otaku would want a Wii hard drive, Gamecyte.com ran a contest to find the biggest geek they could and award him with enough Wii points to fill up the hard drive he probably wasn't going to get from Nintendo. My entry was a pirate NES console I case modded into an old NES cartridge. It's a cartridge that plugs into a cartridge that plugs into your TV. Yeah, I know I'm a huge dork. That's why I won. Being a geek snagged me 4,000 Wii points, and the first thing I got was something I never even heard of. DoReMi Fantasy, Milon's adventure for the Super Famicom. This game was never localized for North America. The closest thing we ever got was Milon's Secret Castle on the NES, a platforming explorer where you shoot bubbles at things, buy clues, and find secrets. Anyway, DoReMi Fantasy also stars Milon, the guy from the Secret Castle game, so it's sort of a sequel. The game starts out with a 16-bit cinematic, and it looks pretty good for a Super Nintendo game. Our hero's running around with his brother, hanging out with fairies, and everything's cool, but then this demon just comes along, steals his fairy, and runs away. Milon's pissed, but he's just a kid. So what does he do? He tells his parents. Unfortunately, I have no idea what his parents tell him. Because the game is an import, all the text is still in Japanese. This must be some of the non-essential material the game description was talking about. I guess his parents tell him to go have an adventure, because when Milon leaves, you can start the first level. The first thing I notice is the jumping animation. I love that little flip. It's awesome. You can run, jump on enemies, shoot bubbles, all your standard platform stuff. There are even coins, or in this case, notes to collect. If you get 100, you get an extra life, just like Mario. There's also a charge attack that fires bubbles in all directions. Enemies come back if you walk off screen. Jumping on them only stuns them, but that's okay, because you can use stunned enemies as platforms to reach notes or power-ups. The best power-up are the float shoes. These things are essential. When you don't have them, the game feels like it's missing something. One hit kills you in this game unless you pick up a change of clothes. Red means you die in one hit, blue means 2, and green is 3. Each set of levels has a map, similar to Super Mario World, where you walk on a path to select the levels or enter houses to advance the story. And there are a few things about this game I couldn't figure out at first, like this one spot in the second level. There's an extra life just below the surface of the water, but I can't get it. No matter what button I push or how high I jump from, I just float on the surface. Why is it even there? Well, it turns out, later in the game, you get this accordion that lets you dive under the water, and you need to come all the way back to level 2 if you want that extra life. Why an accordion? Is it because it's so heavy? You get a new instrument for each world you visit, and each instrument gives you a new ability. The flute lets you push boxes, the trumpet lets you stand on certain blocks. You know, the only one besides the accordion that lets you do anything really cool is the Ocarina, which lets you create a ladder. Wait a minute, a magic ocarina? Fairies? A floppy green hat? Man, this game is starting to look more and more like The Legend of Zelda. Milon even has the same weird sideburns as Link. Wasn't there a Zelda game about collecting instruments? Yeah, Link's Awakening on the Game Boy. Come to think of it, Milon's mother looks kind of like Milon from Ocarina of Time, and his father looks just like Link's uncle on the Super Nintendo. It's obviously just a coincidence, but it still caught my eye. After you beat a wooden robot at the end of World 1 and you get the flute, you move on to Candyland, which seems to be inhabited by little fat people. I guess it's a health warning. If you eat nothing but candy all the time, you're going to be a fatty. And I don't know if it's explained in the text anywhere, but all of a sudden Bomberman shows up. What's Bomberman doing here? I guess Bomberman's also a Hudson Soft game, but really? Bomberman? Anyway, Milon's got to make a choice, but I have no idea what these things say. Okay, I guess I choose the Black Bomberman. Here we go. Okay, Black Bomberman sets a bomb. He blows up a wall. He scorches you. Oh, what a jerk. Sometimes the story screen shows you something new you can do in upcoming levels. This one shows you how to launch yourself out of giant wine bottles. The candy landscape of World 2 is pretty different than the forest you started out in. It has dancing strawberries, killer forks, and even a river of milk. It also introduces the necessity of destroying blocks in order to get where you need to go, and that's pretty fun. Occasionally you'll come across a door that'll take you to one of 3 minigames. There's one where you try and shoot birds, another where you try to answer questions about birds, and another one where you have to remember what items flew across the screen. They're instructions, but I can't read them. If you do well the minigames, you'll score a couple extra lives. As you go through the game, you see the standard theme levels. Water, fire, wind, you know the drill. The game starts out pretty easy, but the difficulty really shoots up as you get close to the end. The last 3 worlds are killer, and some of the boss fights are ridiculous. In most games, you can find a pattern in boss fights to keep you safe, but it must have taken me nearly an hour to figure out how to beat this snowman. He hurls a barrage of snowballs at you that are just unavoidable. You have to guess if he's going to throw low or throw high, and it seems completely random. I couldn't find a pattern. In the end, I just got lucky. When you finally get to the last boss, he turns out to be this giant frog. He looks nothing like he did in the opening cinematic, and what's more, he's probably the easiest boss in the game. You just crouch in the corner and shoot bubbles at him till his head pops off. Then you're done, right? Nuh-uh. This is a Super Nintendo game. Every SNES boss has 2 forms or more. After you take care of Frogman, the real bad guy shows up. But he's just a pretty anime boy, and he still looks like a wuss compared to the silhouette in the beginning. And the thing is, he's still pretty easy. Well, except this badass punching move he has. If you aren't already moving when he throws his punch, you're dead, no questions asked. It's not that bad though. Just stock up on power-ups, spam them with bubbles, and you'll see the credits in no time. For an SNES platformer, DoReMi Adventure is not that bad. It's a little easy at first, but it makes up for it later on, and it has its fair share of interesting levels, strange enemies, and unnecessary cameos. If there's one thing about this game I would have changed, it's the speed. Some of the early levels are so slow that when you finally get to a fast level, like the snowboarding level, it's a welcome relief. Aside from the weird Zelda similarities, Milon's Adventure also features a Sun-Moon boss that seems reminiscent of the Sun-Moon boss from Kirby's Adventure, and another boss that just makes me think of Eero the Acrobat from Sunsoft. Again, it's probably just a coincidence, but if you're a retro guy like me, it's something you might notice. That's pretty much it for DoReMi Adventure. It's a cute, inoffensive platformer that reminds me of the kind of weird third-party games I would get from a grandparent or aunt for Christmas. It's not great, but if you want something a little different and still pretty fun, it's not bad. This video is made possible by Gamecyte. For a deeper look into video game news, check out www.gamecyte.com.